It is the FTN Fast Break Podcast, episode 7, Monday, August 26, 2024. What is going on, everybody? Welcome in Zach Graham, aka Kawaisenberg DFS, alongside my podcast co-host. It's Mike Randle at Randle Rant. Mike, another week means another week closer, of course, to NFL kickoff, but also to the end of the NBA offseason. We are about a month away from training camps opening now. So again, I know all of the hubbub is with the NFL season approaching in about 10 days, but I'm counting down. I'm almost to the hourly countdown until NBA training camps open, because that's when all the sweet news starts coming out. Kind of a dead period right now, which is why we're going to talk more Underdog best ball today. But before we jump into that, how you feeling, my friend?
Yeah, did a couple drafts. Also had the pleasure of going to the Yankee game last Wednesday night, Zach, with my friend who works for the Milwaukee Bucks. So we almost came to blows over arguments. I brought up the Chris Middleton discussion. Okay. And he discarded me, which you can do when you've been best friends with someone since fifth grade. You can simply discard them. But I did catch a foul ball that went off my friend's back. So it wasn't a total loss. But yes, we dove into the Bucks. I'm ready to go. NBA, it's going to be here before we know it. Yes, NFL is starting, but it's coming. You got me back into the best ball with that great best ball stream that you had on Friday. So I got back at a best ball again, ready to rock and roll.
Man, I I imagine that best friend who works with the Bucks was probably on my side of the Middleton argument.
Yes.
But
Well, that you got it. I told him about it, and I said, listen, he could say whatever he wants, but I've known you since 1985. Look, he goes, will you shut up? Will you please?
And yeah, you mentioned the Underdog best ball streams got started. That was a blast. Of course, our buddy UNC, Chris, in there. Of course, we're paired next to each other, sniping each other all draft, but pretty happy with our start on Friday. Another Underdog best ball draft live streamed on the FTN Fantasy YouTube channel and Twitter, or X as it's known now. That's Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern, every Friday leading up to the NBA season. And of course, Fast Break Podcast every Monday leading up to the season. Let's jump into some of our overvalued players. Last week, Mike, we talked about some of our undervalued players, some of those guys that we think we're getting a little bit of a steal on at their current ADP. Is going to go the opposite direction today, and I'll go ahead and start. And again, some of these are really just in relation to where I have these guys ranked in my top 200. Came out for free on ftnfantasy.com here. Underdog best ball rankings. Right now, my first guy here. It never feels good to say that LeBron James is somehow overvalued. But again, this is just a difference in rank for me. I have him at 17, ADP of 12. So again, there's just some other forwards in that range, like a Scotty Barnes, a Jaylen Brown even, that I would put there with LeBron. Because again, I think LeBron going to continue to try to manage his minutes and make another playoff run next spring. So I'm still going to have some LeBron, right? I'm drafting 150 teams. I'll get some of the king, but that's just one of the biggest disparities between my ranks and the ADPs there in the top 20. So what say you about the king?
Yeah, listen, LeBron is wonderful, and I've been caught up in all these arguments of Jordan versus LeBron for the last 20 years. I'm almost fired here at FTN for this, but fine. He's wonderful. He's incredible. He's a legend. He's on my Mount Rushmore, Zach. If he's not one, he's 1A. But in a 2024-2025 best ball draft, I am going to have much less exposure than most to LeBron for all the reasons you outlined. I mean, I'd rather be a year early than a year late on a player like this. Right. And I also believe in our ability to find those values in other areas. He's great, but I want to have a certain projection for games played. I want to know the team is going to be in the mix, which sometimes the Lakers are, sometimes they're not. I get it on a per game basis, but for best ball, for season long, I am with you. No, thank you.
And I will make a slight edit to that, because I remembered I made a couple more maneuvers in my rankings. So in the notes here, I had him as 17th. I have LeBron 15th in that first run of rankings that went public. But again, ADP of 12. So still slightly overvalued by the field here in my book. I'll toss it to you. Maybe talking about one of LeBron's teammates here. Who's your first overvalued player you want to bring to the table?
I just haven't ever been able to buy into Anthony Davis on a season-long basis. Look, Zach, he made me a lot of money in DFS in the playoffs. That's not what I'm talking about. But you can project, or I should say, I can project Anthony Davis better in a 7-game series against the Nuggets or something like that than I can season long. He's 31 years old. He just played the most games in a season he's played since 2017, 2018. And it's a very polarizing best ball thought of, I am not a doctor, so I will disregard injuries, or I'm constantly worried about injuries. I think there's a middle ground, and I'm in the middle with AD. There are other players that I like better than him in that area. And I know on a per game basis, he's fantastic, but it's just someone that I don't want to get to for all the reasons you said about LeBron. It's not that he's not incredible. It's not that in a short series, I could end up having him and have high exposure and pay off on a per game or couple game basis. But he's going right now around Tatum, Edwards, Sabonis, who I love, Banchero, Scotty Barnes. You know, I loved him last year. Not interested. It's early. I think he's being drafted at his upside, as most of the top players are, but he just doesn't make me feel comfortable. And it goes back to risk tolerance. If you're comfortable with AD, that's fine. I don't want to be in a position where he plays well for a week and I look and say, well, I'm sure next week he's going to be out. Or he's out and I go, see, I knew it. It's just no positive for me. And I do believe it comes down to risk tolerance. And with Anthony Davis, Zach, I don't have the tolerance for him.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And one thing that I think because again, we're talking best ball here. One thing that's important to note is where his ADP has shifted over the last couple of seasons as the field starts to adjust to the so-called hero big type of build in these drafts. You see guys like Anthony Davis. You mentioned Domantas Sabonis right behind Anthony Davis in terms of ADP there. These are first-round guys, whereas in the past, Anthony Davis has been late second, sometimes early third, I think, 2 years ago. So again, this guy, like you said, kind of being drafted at his peak, coming off the year where, again, as you mentioned, played the most games he has in the last 6 or 7 seasons. So I like that shout. And all of the names you mentioned right there, Sabonis, if you want to get a big in the first round that's not named Jokic, Embiid, or Wembanyama, totally fine with him. I have Paolo ranked up there, I think at number 8. So we talked about him a little bit on the values episode. So I totally get the argument there that Anthony Davis may be a little bit too high for your liking.
Yeah, and Zach, it's true with any best ball draft or fantasy draft. The majority of your points usually, not always, but usually come from your first few picks. So I really want to buy in to those type of players. Love Jason Tatum last year. Celtics, they can't win with him and Brown. Motivated. I mean, all of that young ascending player gets a majority of shots, playing time. All of that factors in. I'm just not comfortable with AD where he is.
Next one up for me, and we talked about this on the live stream on Friday a little bit, DeMar DeRozan. Of course, now in Sacramento, so joining forces with De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, and an ADP of 27. Now, again, am I going to have 0 DeMar DeRozan in my 150 drafts? No, but my rank is 34 right now. So, again, I'm not going to end up with a ton of DeMar unless that ADP starts to dip. I've been a little bit lower on him, I think, in past seasons in my best ball ranks than the field. So this is really nothing new for me. And I love DeMar, right? Those who have tuned into the FTN streams for years know that I used to have that Spurs DeRozan autographed jersey on the wall behind me. Love DeMar. But coming over here, again, you've got 2 all-star caliber, all-NBA caliber players now with Fox and Sabonis. Is DeRozan going to come in and be the primary or even secondary option in this offense? Secondary, I guess you could make the argument for, because Sabonis isn't a guy that's going to go out there and have to put up 20-plus shots. But taking DeMar late second, early third sometimes, even mid-third, just feels a little bit strong for me compared to some of the other wing options in that area. And I think that's the best thing I can say about DeMar right now from a best ball upside standpoint is he is, again, at that wing position when we talk about the positional scarcity. So maybe that's propping him up a little bit. But in that range, right? Give me Lauri Markkanen, who's going behind him. And of course, my namesake, right? I'm going to roll with Kawhi. Paul George is out of there with the Clips. You talk about guys who played the most games in a long time. Kawhi Leonard fits that bill as well. Whenever he's healthy, he's still producing at a high rate. So again, I think a little bit riskier there. But I have Kawhi one spot ahead of DeRozan. And both of those guys in the mid 30s for me. So DeRozan in the mid to late 20s is just, again, I feel like it's a little bit reaching.
Yeah, you nailed it. Really well said. So you look at the ADP here on Underdog. Jaylen Brown is the wing 8, and he's going at an ADP of 20. DeRozan is going 13.8 spots after him. So there's a significant gap. He's right behind Julius Randle, but you nailed it. Why on earth would you take DeMar DeRozan going to the Kings instead of Lauri Markkanen? That one, I don't even understand it. It's only a one spot ADP difference, but there's a chasm of a difference to them. And I agree with Kawhi Leonard. Yes, a lot of the issues that people are going to say what you said with Anthony Davis, you can say what you say with Kawhi Leonard. This is a different position. Jalen Johnson is there. Paul George is changing teams. So there's a lot of sort of uncertainty, whereas I like the other options around Anthony Davis. But you nailed it. We're not going to find massive differences in ADP for best ball, but the little differences add up. Markkanen over DeRozan every single time and twice on Sunday, and right now he's going after.
Well, this next player that you have on your list, I pushed off of my value list last week because I knew we had a discussion brewing. Talk to me about your next player here on your overvalued players list.
Yeah, I like the player in real basketball. I like him for the NBA, for him joining the Bulls. I don't like him as much in best ball, but you can provide context for me and maybe change me. I have Josh Giddey right now is going as the 20th guard. He's ahead of Fred VanVleet. He's ahead of Jamal Murray, who I know was terrible in the Olympics, but it's still Jamal Murray. Okay. You have Derek White, Des Bane we talked about last week. So there are just other players that I like better than Giddey. I fully understand that it is well within the range of outcomes that Josh Giddey goes to the Bulls and becomes this almost triple-double S type of player. I see it, Zach. I don't believe it. I like him as an actual part of the team. I like other players better in best ball, but I could be wrong. I think he's a little overvalued for me. I would take Jamal Murray ahead of him. I would also take Derek White and Des Bane. That's why I put him on the list. But I do think it's a great acquisition for the Bulls. And I recognize that in the bell curve at the end he goes great and is one of the best values in best ball. I'm just on the other side.
Yeah. And again, I think all of that is fair. And again, we're getting into the 4th, 5th rounds here talking about Josh Giddey, right? Right now, ADP 50, basically 55. I've got him ranked 46th and guard 19, right? So you said he's guard 20 right now by ADP. So it's not a huge jump, about 10 spots between the ranks and ADP. And it's kind of just what you said, right? You making that counter argument that now he's going to be in my book, going to be the guy. They're going to roll the ball out there, say, Josh Giddey, this is your team here as we are a team in transition, right? DeRozan has left. Levine and Vucevic, certainly not long for this roster, at least through their current contracts. And Josh Giddey himself, right? The Bulls are going to have to make a decision on whether or not they extend him. So I think he's going to have all the opportunity in the world. We have seen him be a fantasy monster when Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is sidelined. Yes, and then again, I know it's a different game, but you see him in the FIBA game, right? And producing these stat stuffing type of performances that if that continues in an NBA game at an NBA pace here on a team like the Bulls, I like Josh Giddey where we can get him right now. So again, I know this is one of the few that we have an actual argument on, and I'm excited to see where it plays out. I have a ton of Giddey in my early drafts right now.
Yeah, Zach, we're at the Fantasy Football Expo, and I'm watching the games there, having a beverage, and I'm hearing Zach in my ear. Giddey's doing really well. And I'm saying, but again, his rookie season, 12.5 points, 7.8 rebounds, so essentially 8 rebounds, 6.4 assists. Folks, you pick one of us. Zach is right. This could be 16, 8, and 8. It could be 18. It's possible that it's there. I think it's going to be more like a 15, 6, and 7, which puts him a little bit lower. But I agree. This one, what you saw could be the precursor to what he does with the Bulls. It's possible. I'm on a little bit less exposure than you, but I get it.
Yeah. And again, like if Lonzo Ball comes back and can actually play, which like fingers crossed, I would love to see Lonzo get back out there. Then that makes this bet look a lot worse. And clearly, I'm on the side right now, unfortunately, thinking that Lonzo comeback may be just not going to come to fruition here. But we can keep it pushing. I'm going to stay in the Eastern Conference here. We've got an ADP of 77.4 for one Josh Hart.
Yep.
Now in the playoffs, that makes a lot of sense because Josh Hart was playing sometimes even more than 48 minutes in these playoff games. But the Knicks, you would assume, going to come back into this season healthy. You have added McCall Bridges to this wing rotation now. I just don't see any way that Josh Hart should be drafted in the top 80 picks. This is a huge disparity between my best ball ranks here. The first run, I have him ranked 101 with an ADP of 77.4. So again, I think this is something that you and I probably see eye to eye on because Josh Hart just does not play that same role, and he's not a great fantasy point producer per minute. So I wouldn't be surprised if I end up with 0 Josh Hart in my drafts unless his ADP starts to drop precipitously.
Yeah, I had this one down, Zach, and that's why there's one less on the list, and I took him off.
Gotcha.
Again, we are being skewed by playoff Josh Hart, which became Shaq light. That is not going to continue. He still is a sporadic outside shooter. He's gotten better, but it's not consistent enough on a season-long basis. I think there's going to be a lot of uncertainty in terms of who's going to be the man each and every night for this roster, besides the obvious. I'm talking about supporting cast for Brunson. But I agree. They have Bridges now, uncertain role, new players coming in, still a slow team. They play a lot of minutes, but I'm not ready to project Josh Hart based on the playoffs. I'm not. This was a great call.
Staying in the East here and getting back to the wings, that's one thing to note is that Josh Hart is also guard eligible here. Again, I would like the Josh Hart a little bit, or I think my dislike would be a little bit less intense of that pick if he was a wing, but at guard, can't make it happen. Let's stay in the East here. We are talking another wing. Who's next up on your list of overvalued players?
Over me? Tobias Harris over me? I'm just not excited about a 32-year-old player that's changing teams. Now, he used to be on the Pistons. I understand that. He's also used to be on the Bucks, the Magic, the Clippers, and the Sixers. But I just don't think his role transfers. And I was very disappointed with how he ended the year in the playoffs. He had the one good game against the Knicks, I think. You look at his raw numbers, 17 points, 6.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 3-point percentage dropped precipitously, 35.3%, lowest it's been since 2018, 2019. I don't trust his role being the same, and I do not want to invest in a veteran player changing teams, going to the Pistons when he was discarded from the Sixers. I think there's better options there. So he just doesn't do anything for me. It's the type of player that I don't want. I'd rather have Keegan Murray. I know there's a lot of people who have to shoot the ball in Sacramento, but I'd rather have Keegan Murray. You have OG Anunoby with all the steals and the blocks. You have the Thompson brothers. Your guy, Chris Middleton. I would much rather have Chris Middleton than Tobias Harris. So older player, changing teams, declining three-point accuracy, uncertain role, not banking on prolific scoring on the Pistons. So I'm going to pass.
Yeah, I think to add to that case, I would say Tobias Harris would be a candidate to be rested in some of those playoff rounds for best ball. Because if the Pistons, unless they make some miraculous turnaround here with this young core, Tobias Harris is the key that unlocks this young group. Okay, then we'll just get beat by Tobias Harris. I think that's a good shout by you there. Mid-60s there in terms of ADP. We'll get back to the West here finally. John Collins. Again, this is about a 10-pick difference between the ADP and my rank, but I've got him 94th, currently going 85.6 on Underdog. Again, it's a team that is in flux, that is very much tanking. John Collins is a guy that could find himself in a new home, right? There's a short list of players that are tradable. Lauri Markkanen, as we discussed 2 weeks ago, no longer tradable this coming season. So I think John Collins, just a very volatile pick there, nearing, again, in my ranks, 94. Again, John Collins, just a guy that I'm probably not getting a ton of. There's also a chance, right, that you get Coach Will Hardy making the switch at the 5 to Walker Kessler as this team continues to prioritize some of these younger assets. So there's just a little bit too much uncertainty for me on a guy like John Collins at that ADP.
Yeah, it's an excellent call. Last year, when we play DFS on a nightly basis, sometimes we start to see patterns that we wouldn't have otherwise noticed. A lot of times I got burned with John Collins multiple times last year. And I said, man, maybe he's not at the level I think he is. New players coming in, like you said, younger players moving forward, 15 points per game, 8.5 rebounds were solid, 66 games played, only 28 minutes. So a little bit of a drop off there. I kind of like to see him get back to 30 plus for me to draft him. No interest here. Like John Collins, good NBA player, not a great best ball player, more of a role player for me.
All right, one more player on your overvalued list here. What do we got?
Yeah, I'm not a DeAndre Ayton guy. I'm really not. I don't like Ayton. I don't like his motivation. 26 years old. I am not an Ayton guy. He was discarded from the Suns, basically, I think, because they didn't like his attitude. He goes to Portland, a team that struggled last year. This is the chance for him to be, God, I'm going to date myself here, Zach, sort of the Tim Thomas or the Tony Campbell, who were players way back in the day who you loved in fantasy basketball because they scored big on terrible teams. That was the deal. And when they went to good teams, they became role players. So I expected Ayton, if he wanted to get my love back for best ball, to drop 22 and like 13. And we didn't get it. We got 16.7 points, 11 rebounds, obviously no threes. His field goal percentage, okay, but I'd like it to be back over 60, which is where he was in 2020, 2021, and 2021, 2022. Not an Ayton guy, much rather have other players in that area than DeAndre Ayton. I know he's a big, so people are going to gravitate towards him. But Zach Edey, who showed some, I know he's coming off the bench. Valanciunas is a guy, Zach, who could go ballistic on the Wizards. That's the type of player that I'm looking for. Even Hartenstein on OKC, other players I'd like. I'm just passing on DeAndre Ayton. Maybe it's a personality thing with me, but I didn't see the dominance that I wanted to see in Portland.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. I didn't have him on my list, but you look at the ranks. I have him 90th, ADP of 81 right now. And again, one thing we haven't even discussed, who did they draft 7th? Yeah. Donovan Clingan is there now. This team is going to be tanking. DeAndre Ayton makes the most sense. I think he and Jeremy Grant in terms of guys that could be rested at the end of the year too. Ayton could also be on a different team. So right there with you. DeAndre Ayton a little overvalued right now. And I'm going to close it out. Just one more guy on my list here. I'm going to say Kyle Anderson. I do not have him ranked in the top 200. ADP of 168 right now. And this is, I think, an okay little transition here to our favorite undrafted players right now, because Kyle Anderson, how many injuries need to happen on the Warriors for Kyle Anderson to be a guy that gets into your top 6 scoring, your weekly scoring lineup for one of these best ball teams? I just don't see it at this point of his career. He had plenty of opportunity on that Minnesota team last season when he got thrust into the starting lineup. I know he's had a bad back that's kind of plagued him throughout his career. At this point, I just don't see it happening from a fantasy standpoint for slow-mo. And again, like, I would rather take a 15th or 16th round shot on somebody. Like, I guess we can go at a similar position. We talk about some of these guys on tanking teams. We expect maybe a Brooklyn Nets to be resting a Dennis Schroeder, a Cam Johnson, right? Maybe a Nick Claxton. So how about a Day'Ron Sharpe as your 15th, 16th round pick? And I will say, we've had these down in the notes for over a week now. Some of these players have started to pick up some minimal ADP averages as more people get into these drafts and start to see some of these undrafted potential gems down there. Day'Ron Sharpe is your 3rd or 4th big, potentially the starting center in these playoff rounds for the Nets. We know how productive he can be. I like Sharpe, especially if you go hero big, right? You've got a Jokic at the top of the draft. Maybe you pick up a Zubac in the 12th or 13th round. Day'Ron Sharpe in the 16th. I'll take some of that.
Excellent point. You're looking for a bench player who was one injury away from contributing. Slow-mo on the Warriors now. The only argument is that he somehow raises his level because he's playing with better players. Minnesota last year only started 10 games. He's gone single digits in scoring for 3 straight years. Not a good 3-point shooter unless he gets the volume. Wasn't getting it. So he's going to have sort of a reserve role here and there. I don't want a player named Slow-mo who can't shoot 3 points. I just don't. He's going to have super efficiency, and I'm not going to bank on that from a player who is going to be 31 at the end of September.
Yeah, if we're looking for more veteran type wings, right, who have changed teams, I know you've got one here on your list. Like, talk to me a little bit about Caleb Martin at the end of a draft.
Yeah, Caleb Martin is a player, yes. Full disclosure, college basketball in Nevada, fine. But he's got length, he has explosion, he's very streaky and can shoot. He's now going to be with a good Sixer team coming off the bench. That is the type of player I want. Caleb Martin can give you 20 in any single game. We saw it with Miami. He had the injury last year, was a little slow getting going, but 2 years ago, he was fantastic in the playoffs. I would rather invest at, you have his ADP about 182, much rather have him than someone like a Kyle Anderson, a veteran. A younger player, more athletic, can get you some steals, some blocks, some rebounds, and is a streaky three-point shooter. That's what I'm looking for. That's the type of player I like. And I'm listening, I'm a Caleb Martin truther, but listen, you have an injury to Paul George, something like that, maybe get some more playing time. He is a perfect ancillary piece on a successful team, which is what he was in Miami.
Yep, totally with you there. And I know we both have this guy rather on our list. So let's talk a little bit about the Nuggets and Julian Strawther, right? Christian Braun, probably the favorite right now to take that starting role for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who is now with the Magic. But Julian Strawther, and maybe a little bit of summer league recency bias for me here. He was fantastic in the Vegas event. And again, I think from a fantasy standpoint, for me, profiles as a guy that I would rather invest in long-term for a season-long best ball draft than a Christian Braun. So Julian Strawther makes this list for me. Anything else you have to add on Strawther? Because again, I know we co-signed on this one.
Yeah, 6'6", big, plays bigger than that. Didn't shoot super well last year during the regular season, but is a 36, 38, 40% three-point shooter, Zach. You have to adjust coming from college game to pro game. That is what Strawther can do. He was fantastic last year in the summer league, played well this year also. I'm a fan of Strawther, came from Gonzaga. Understand he's a player that can light you up when he comes off the bench, sort of a Monty Morris on steroids, if you will, and he can score. So he's a player I like, sort of around that Caleb Martin archetype. He can, if there's injuries or he starts getting hot, he can have a critical role on this Denver team, which is something that's underrated.
A pair of bigs up next. I'm going to Detroit. Again, we talked about maybe a guy like Tobias Harris taking a seat at the end of the season. Jalen Duren, maybe a little less likely to be a casualty of the tank, but Paul Reed is now his backup there in the front court, and we know all about B-Ball Paul from a fantasy standpoint. So if Jalen Duren goes down for a couple games, maybe a little bit longer, going to have a huge fantasy benefit for Paul Reed there. And then again, looking at the end of my drafts, particularly in a hero big build, Paul Reed, another one of those centers that I like taking a shot on in the last round. And I know you have another center on your list as well.
Yeah, I can't quit Steven Adams because I think he could step into a role if there's injuries. And he's also a pretty efficient producer, especially with the boards. I know he's with Houston now, so he's not going to have the same role that he had with OKC, but I like Steven Adams late. Veteran guy who can step in that can actually produce on a shorter minutes, which is what I'm looking for. TJ McConnell, one of my loves. And the one time I didn't play him, Zach, is when he went absolutely ballistic in the playoffs. So frustrated but I think he can, again, depending on the role, can come in, get you a couple steals, assists, things like that. If there's an injury, player is resting, you can slide him right in the lineup. And Dalton Knecht, I know Dalton Knecht can play. Everyone knows that he was one of the best picks, value picks in the draft by the Lakers. He can shoot it. He can rebound. He can get his shot open. He's a player that's going to grow into sustained success. So right now, Underdog's ADP about 175.5, but this is a rookie, Zach, that will contribute right away on this team. Not hard to do when LeBron James is getting you open and kicking it to you. But if I saw Austin Reeves do it, I can see Dalton Knecht do it. That's my point.
Yeah, and we talked a lot about Knecht after the draft, right, in our coverage, talking about the value that the Lakers got there, a player that you would think can come in and contribute to a team that needed more bodies. I'm going to flip-flop these two in my list because the guy who's listed next is probably my favorite of this bunch. Let me just go DeAnthony Melton. Well, why not grab Melton, who I think has a chance to start, I think, for this Warriors team if he's healthy. So give me the undrafted Melton over Slow-Mo going 2 rounds earlier. Yes. Very simple case for me at the end of the draft.
Yeah, very smart. DeAnthony Melton is a winner. He's a player that affects winning. And when you put him in your lineup, he's going to get minutes. I mean, you say DeAnthony Melton, I say Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I don't think there's a difference, but those are the type of players that win you games. And so he's going to get minutes, exactly what we want, underrated value. I don't want to bank on someone coming in like we talked, prior when you talked about your players coming in like a Kyle Anderson. I don't want that, but this is a great call.
Yeah, so my last one here, Going back to the Brooklyn Nets, Jalen Wilson, we saw at the end of last year, more from a DFS perspective, right? What he can do at the NBA level, at injuries and things to start the career, couple speed bumps, but fantastic in the summer league. And again, I think this Brooklyn team is ripe for some of these undrafted late round type of guys who, again, I am knocking guys like Nick Claxton and Cam Johnson just a little bit because of the volatility I think we will see. Brooklyn now back in control of their draft fate, right? Making that big pick swap in the offseason. Now they can actually fully tank, and I think Jalen Wilson could be a huge benefactor. I will also note this guy's not undrafted right now. He's very much on the radar of best ball players, but Noah Clowney going in like the 160s or the low 170s, I think wing eligible too. Also an interesting pick from this net side.
Jalen Wilson was an elite scorer in college for Kansas. So he played in the toughest conference and was the top scorer on the team. Hit big shots, take big shots. I like banking on those players, especially when they've disappointed initially, because they figure it out, Zach. They eventually will figure it out. He started to do so with 3 games in April of double-digit scoring. He is a good three-point shooter. That's going to come back. He's adjusting. Great from the corner as well. Jalen Wilson, a great player, great upside that you're talking about that is going sort of under the radar because he was single digits for most of the year last year. But remember, the cream rises to the top, and Jalen Wilson was an elite scorer. Can he get to 12, 10 points a game? Definitely, if given the chance.
Right, and then you get down to those playoff weeks, and maybe you've stashed Jalen Wilson there as your last pick, and then all of a sudden he's playing 35 minutes a game in March. Could happen. Again, those are the type of upside swings you're taking here in the last couple rounds. I think you got one more guy on your list here to close out our favorite undrafted options.
I think I'm good. I think I got more. Yeah, Martin Strother, Adams, McConnell, of course, my guy, and Connect, who, again, big-time scorer in college, sort of like a Jalen Wilson light, but I think he's in a better situation that he can contribute right away at the moment.
Well, let's close it out, as we always do, with a little stock up, stock down, and I'll start here. My stock up is these Denver Nuggets jersey number changes. First of all, heartfelt change here from Aaron Gordon. He goes from wearing 50 to 32, which will honor his late brother, Drew Gordon. So then from Nuggets beat writer Harrison Wind, this is where my chuckles come in, because Harrison Wind tweeted yesterday, Hunter Tyson will wear number 5 this season after giving number 4 to Russell Westbrook. And there was an inquiry by Westbrook into wearing number 0, I'm told, but Christian Brown didn't budge. So Hunter Tyson gave Westbrook number 4 free of charge. So look, Hunter Tyson, that's bad business, my friend. It may be good being a good teammate, but man, you could at least get a little 10, 15K from the former league MVP. I don't know. Good on you, Hunter Tyson. And Christian Brown asserting dominance, right? I'm number 0 for the Nuggets. It doesn't want to hear it from Russell Westbrook. I just can't imagine this kid rebuking the former MVP of the league for the number change, but that's what happened. And again, it gave me a nice laugh there on Sunday night.
Hunter Tyson, good guy. I agree. He feels, Christian Brown, that he's legit and he's established, so he needs more than that. I wonder what the offer was. I'm sure there's a price, Zach. Everyone's got a price. Brown not giving it up. I kind of like that in a way, but the nostalgia of me, Russ, as I told you last pod, I hope Russ has a really great role with the Nuggets, because I think it'd be a perfect way to finish off his career, which has been largely underrated. And he could be part of a winning team, which would really be the cherry on top.
I'm really glad you're about to talk about this, because I also wanted to fit it in myself. So what's your stock up for this week?
9 years blood clotting issue for Chris Bosh, who was really coming into his own as sort of a stretch big, which was really exactly what the NBA was moving towards. Sort of was ahead of his time there, had to be retired, came back to the court because of Goran Dragic's tribute game. Great to see him back there. Bosh, a great player, key part of those Miami teams, great player for Toronto as well. Hate to see his career cut short because of a medical issue, but it was great to see him back. Very nice guy. 9 years, returned to the court, played a little bit, nice nostalgia. Pour one out here for Chris Bosh. Great to see you back.
Yeah, and I also like that he said, when I saw Rasho Nesterovic out there getting up and down a little bit, I knew, okay, I think I can go get a little bit of run. So 100% with you. Great to see Chris Bosh getting out there, getting up and down in the court for the first time in almost a decade. Stock down now. And for me, this is almost like we're very similar here. For me, the stock down this week is trash talk.
Yeah.
I just think we have to up the bar, right? Like first the whole Noah Lyles, NBA, U.S. national team thing in the Olympics. I know you're going to talk about that in a minute, but now we've got Anthony Edwards and Magic Johnson trading barbs, right? Anthony Edwards was a subject of some of that Olympic talk, right? But then now Ant loves to talk, and we love him for it. But he said there weren't really any skilled players back in the day besides MJ. And then we've got Stephen A. Smith at some sort of sit down with Magic Johnson, of course, pressing Magic to respond to those comments. And then Magic is going off about, well, I don't respond to guys who haven't won any titles, didn't win an NBA title, didn't win a college title, said, I don't even know if he won a high school title. And to me, Mike, this is all lame. This is terrible banter. We got to up our game. Like maybe we have some trash talk between current NBA players and not this little side banter. And like Magic, I get that he has to have a little cheeky comeback when Stephen A asks him about it, but like the man just won a gold medal, Magic. Like his trophy case is not empty. So it's all lame. Like let's get some banter between the players that are actually playing right now. Stock down for the trash talk.
I feel like everyone, Zach, wants to trash talk, but they get to a point where they won't go over the line. That is not my problem, I can assure you. So, like, yeah, either give me some real trash talk or don't say anything. Don't give me this half-ass back and forth stuff here. I agree. Magic, you're in the 80s with the whole thing with Bird and Isaiah. I mean, we can go on and on with it. I can give you stories for 2 hours. So, Magic, a little bit better than that. But, yeah, either give me the trash talk or don't say anything. Don't give me this middle ground.
Yep. All right. What do you got for your stock down here to close out episode 7?
Hey, Noah Lyles, here's the deal. I was the track captain at Boston College for 3 years, and I was their best sprinter, okay? I'm not even in the same stratosphere as you, but I get the mindset of the sprinter. You got to smack yourself. You have to scream. You have to get fired up because you only run 100 meters. That's fine. Noah, let's take it easy. Number one, you barely won the 100 at the Olympics. It was a miracle, and if the other two guys didn't battle each other and lean at the same time, you lose. Then you get COVID and you run and get destroyed. You wouldn't beat Tyreek Hill in a 50. You'd beat him in 100, but not a 50. And now you're trash talking the NBA. Noah, take it easy. You should know who Nikola Jokic is. You should know who all the NBA players are. This isn't like Carl Lewis or Usain Bolt, who went out there and blew the doors off of everyone and were dominant. He's saying he's the world's fastest man by about 100th of a second because your lean was better than the other two guys. You were getting destroyed the whole race. So I don't like people talking trash that can't back it up. Noah Lyles, you are a coin flip away from really getting humbled at the Olympics. Let's not take on the NBA here. I'd like to see the Tyreek Hill race because he's going to lose in a 50 meters. I'll tell you that right now. Noah Lyles, stock down. Take your gold medal. Recover from COVID. Don't talk to trash, big guy, because you didn't dominate out there. You barely got by.
And you brought up the Jokic. You touched on the Jokic comment too. Come on, man. You know who Nikola Jokic is. You're telling me that you want to talk all this crap about the NBA, but you don't know the 3-time MVP, the reigning champion a couple months ago until they were, of course, dethroned. Like, it's gone too far, Noah. I'm with you, Mike. I co-signed that stock down as well for this week.
Yeah, listen, Noah, I get it. If you went out and took the 100 and the 200, you want to say something, Usain Bolt with the pointing, that's fine. But you barely won. And then the 200 was a nightmare. You had COVID. I mean, it's just so many things. Please, it's Jokic. It's the NBA. Let's get along here. Until you dominate, then you can say something. Mike Jordan's got 6 rings. He can say whatever he wants. Noah Lyles, who wins by an eyebrow in the 100, then loses the 200. You're yapping about Jokic. Take it easy.
Man, Noah Lyles, if he needs to learn a little bit more about the NBA, he can tune back into the Fast Break next week when we're back with episode 8. He could tune into the live stream on Friday and do a little best ball draft with us. He could get the free top 200 Underdog best ball rankings for the NBA. That's at ftnfantasy.com. You can find that on my Twitter at Kawhisenberg DFS. I know at Randle Rant, Mike's Twitter, pumping out not just our NBA content, our NFL content as well, college football coming back, baseball in the home stretch. It's a great time to be a sports fan, Mike.
Yeah, it really is. So much great stuff. Preseason is done. College basketball around the corner. I'm working on the lineups right now. We'll have a lot to say about that. But NBA, back. I was talking to my other friend who was at the game. He works for NBC. He's high up there. I said, thank God you got John Tesh back. He said, honestly, I'm sitting in a production meeting at NBC, and I knew if I didn't get John Tesh back, I would hear it from you every single day. So I just said, forget it. So we are affecting people, Zach. We are affecting people on the Fast Break podcast.
We love it. We'll be back next Monday with another episode of the Fast Break, and I'll see you all on Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern on the FTN Fantasy YouTube and Twitter pages for another live stream best ball draft. Enjoy the rest of your week, everybody. We'll do the same. See you back here next week. Until then, he's Mike. I'm Zach. Goodbye.